What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of the Take Three podcast. As always, my name is Brandon, and I'm joined by my co-host Alex. And in this episode, we're going to be doing our final NFL division preview as we lead in. We're now 2 weeks out from it's a little under 2 weeks from the opening kickoff, when we obviously have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing the Dallas Cowboys on that Thursday night. I believe it's the 9th of September, and then that leads us into the big opening weekend on the 12th. So obviously on the screen prepared, we're going to be covering the NFC West. I expect it to be highly competitive, probably the most competitive, at least on paper, I would say for sure. It'll be the most competitive. I guess before we get into this thing, what do you see when you look at the NFC West?
Yeah, when I look at the NFC West, I think it's clearly the best division in football. They're going to beat up on each other a lot, and whoever manages to be on top of the division is probably going to be on top of the NFC, I feel like.
Exactly. I mean, you look at all these teams, you look at the 49ers coming back last year, they kind of are blessed, right? They're playing a last place schedule going into this year. Their whole team's coming back healthy. Obviously, they kind of have a mini quarterback controversy. Trey Lance looks good in preseason. Jimmy Garoppolo is kind of struggling. I don't know. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Jimmy's going to get the nod out of the gates. And then obviously you have the Rams with their defense, and obviously adding Matt Stafford is huge. As long as Russell Wilson's wearing Seahawks green, the Seahawks are always going to be relevant. And then obviously the Cardinals did quite a few wild things in the offseason that makes them super interesting. Just a little order of business right at the rip. I saw a comment maybe a couple of videos ago. I think it was the NFC South, where somebody said something about the number of games. So just to be clear, the number of games that we post on the screen, that's last year's record, right? We're posting last year's record. There'd be no point if we're going to cover a team and do an entire prediction to post whatever we think right off the bat what the record's going to be. So that's just to clear that up for the gentleman and or lady that posted that comment. Yeah, so the record on the screen that you see on the PowerPoint, that is what last year's standings is. Obviously, we know there's a extra game added to the season. As that person said, I don't know how we take it serious. These guys don't know how many games. I think we know how many games are going to be played in this NFL season. So just get that little order of business out. Yeah, let's get straight into it. Let's go out to the first team on the docket that we're going to cover here is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. As I said, all these teams stacked on paper, pretty interesting. So it's tough going through an order to kind of figure out how do we want to talk about these teams. But when you go last year, the Cardinals went 8-8, second year of Cliff Kingsbury's tenure. Improvement, obviously, when you a second year of Kyler Murray, they kind of put it a little bit back together. They were losing. They lost close games. They're a team that they could win any game, and they could also lose any game when they took the field. Obviously, when you look at their additions this offseason, they had J.J. Watt. That's a huge one. Malcolm Butler, not really a huge addition. He's a veteran in the secondary, kind of slower. Same when you look at A.J. Green. I mean, they have so much speed at receiver. It's like I don't really think A.J. Green was even that necessary. He's a veteran. I really like the addition of Rodney Hudson. They got Matt Prater. He's got a big boot, kind of wild. They get Brian Winters, guard from Buffalo. And then in the draft, they went with Zaven Collins, athletic linebacker. And then they also went with a wide receiver, Rondale Moore, in the second round. And then I believe they added James Conner from Pittsburgh. Just kind of a depth back. They have Chase Edmonds, but obviously Chase Edmonds isn't an every down back. When you look at what they lost Patrick Peterson. He went to Minnesota. They lose Hassan Reddick off the defense. And then Kenyon Drake went to Las Vegas. I was about to say Oakland again. So, I mean, before I really jump into the kind of the stuff that I have on the slate to cover the Cardinals, when you look at Arizona going into this season, do you like what you're seeing out there in the desert?
They have a lot of good on the roster to build from. It'll be tough to see if they are above 800 this year, just based off like the division they play in and some outliers. But the team is good on paper. They got some good defensive pieces. The offense is pretty explosive. But I want to see if Kyler can stay healthy for the entire season. And, like, I expect him to be, like, on the field. He's going to play the games. But, like, last year he looked a little beat up and, like, just a little slowed down the second half of the year. He clearly wasn't as productive as he was the first half. So, like, I'm interested to see if the Cardinals can keep pace for an entire season.
Yeah, you kind of see that frame with Kyler Murray. It kind of gets into even last year when he got hurt. It wasn't really like a huge hit, but I mean, he's smaller. He played baseball. He's got I don't want to say frail because that's kind of like that's a weird word to use when you talk about an NFL quarterback who's obviously in elite physical shape. But I mean, when you look at other quarterbacks, he's on the smaller side of them. He's kind of crafty. He's agile. And it doesn't really take many hits to Kyler Murray for him to get kind of banged up over the course of now we add in another game. So yeah, I would completely agree. It's like this team, when you look at them on paper, they have everything you want. They have everything on offense. I mean, maybe a little bit of O-line concerns, but Kyler Murray can kind of cover up for that with the legs, but they have Hopkins, Buda Baker on the defense. They got Isaiah Simmons. They just got JJ Watt in there to get to the quarterback if he can stay healthy and play a full season. So yeah, that's really my first question. When you look at the Cardinals, can they put it all together now? With what I would say is this is like year 3 of the project. Like they have legitimate expectations to win football games. So do you think they can put it all together with this kind of expectation? Right, year 1 it was kind of first year of Kyler, first year of Kingsbury. Let's see how this thing is. Even going into last year, they had Hopkins. It's kind of like you saw that improvement. They got to 8-8. They went from 5-10-1, I believe it was, to 8-8. But I mean, I think now is with all the offseason additions, Kyler Murray contract extension obviously coming up in a year or two. It's kind of the expectation is to win now. And do you think they'll be able to handle that amount of pressure?
I'm not entirely sure. So it's like an interesting thing for the Cardinals. Like you said, they're going into year 3. They improved to 8-8. They have to become an above 500 football team, and I would assume that their expectations as an organization is to be a wild card team at the very least. That's going to be difficult just because of the division they play in. So you're facing a gauntlet of division opponents. That's 6 games right there. That's going to be incredibly difficult. And then keeping Kyler healthy the entire time and productive the whole time. And I just think it's interesting because it is the 3rd year. So like, if they do, like, I think they're definitely capable of putting it together and being a good football team. But even them playing at a high level and being a good football team, I don't think that guarantees them a wild card spot or above a 500 schedule just based off like their opponents and the division they're in. So even if they do put it all together and they run pretty smooth, that doesn't mean you're beating the Rams, the Seahawks, or the Niners on a Sunday. Like those are extremely good teams. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like if the Cardinals put it together, but they're clearly just not as talented as those other 3 teams, do you go with a different coach? Or if they falter, is he in the hot seat? So like, I don't know where they like, I think they definitely can put it together. They can be a very good football team, but if it's going to get really interesting if they don't, right? Because like your 3rd year of a coach, do you kind of move off? Do you stay on? The division's incredibly tough. So it's like, I think even if they put it together, they're not necessarily guaranteed a playoff spot.
Exactly. Let's hold off on the hot seat because I do have a bit on that. I have a question on that that will come towards the end of this. But yeah, I'm going to kind of fade the Cardinals when it comes to if they'll be able to really put it all together with expectations. I just think when you look at a team that's kind of when you're just free rolling and there's no expectations, even like you can compare this to boxing, right? When you have nothing, like no pressure on you at all, and you can kind of just swing for the fences and really just do whatever. You have nothing to lose, right? There's nothing to lose at all. That was kind of years 1 and 2, which whatever happened, it was going to be the Cardinals. They were going to be happy with it. And last year was kind of an improvement. They got close. And now I think when you ratchet that pressure up, when I've seen Cliff Kingsbury as a coach falter at Texas Tech, not really be that great at Texas Tech. And then he does questionable stuff as well. Last year in close ball games as well. I'm just kind of sitting back. I mean, they have a lot of talent, but I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to, I don't know who's going to be on the field, right? I don't know if Kyler's going to get smoked and get banged up through half a season. We don't know what he's going to look like. And then even with the additions, I don't know if those guys are going to stay on the field and how much they're going to contribute to the team. I was going to say contribute. That's going to be weird. But I mean, JJ Watt, right? Like he's a great player when you think about him on paper, but he's been banged up, I want to say, for the past 5 years, right? It's like he gives you spurts, but then bang, he's done. And then, I mean, even adding Malcolm Butler, it's like, how good is he really going to fill the role that Patrick Peterson left? It's like, I don't know. They have Byron Murphy out there. Obviously, I like Buda Baker, but it's just like, I just don't know. I can't trust the group as a whole now with some legitimate expectations for them to be a competitive football team in an ultra competitive division, probably the most competitive division in the entire NFL, I'd say. It's just, I'm going to fade the Cardinals when it comes to when it gets down to that. I think they'll find ways to lose close games. Once again, you'll kind of see a rinse repeat of the same thing. And you might see some frustrations come out with those expectations.
Yeah, it's like interesting to see how the club is going to perform with expectations because they clearly haven't had them yet. And even last year, they had a Hail Mary touchdown for a win against the Bills. If they don't get that, then they're not even 500. That would put them at 7-9. So it's like the team is very talented. I just don't know. And once again, even if they do put it together, I don't know if their ceiling is high enough to even win the division. So it's going to be interesting.
Exactly. And then you mentioned, yeah, they hit a rough patch. I'm going to jump straight into my second point. There's obviously a big missing void in the Cardinals locker room as a whole. Larry Fitzgerald, it doesn't look like he's going to play. I think he said he's just not feeling football. He's kind of, it sounds like last year was it. I mean, maybe he'll sit out and come back maybe next year, but it just seems like Larry Fitzgerald has been a guy in Arizona for years now, for my whole lifetime almost. It feels like when the going gets bad, it's like who's going to take the reins of that locker room and kind of lead the team through a tough patch. You knew when Larry Fitzgerald was there, he's kind of a voice in the locker room that every player is going to listen to. But now you have so many new faces that are like entering the locker room. Like you could say, hey, JJ Watt, he's been there and done that, but it's like he's a new face. It's somebody that's been in the program since year one with Cliff Kingsbury. Are they going to take what a JJ Watt rolling in the locker room and kind of trying to take over something that they've worked on building? So it's like, will they be able to fill that void without Larry Fitzgerald's kind of leadership there with the team?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. You brought up JJ Watt, and that's immediately where my mind went because you're talking about like multiple defensive player of the year. He has the ultimate respect from his peers. So if there was one individual to be able to walk into a different locker room and have the respect immediately and maybe take up a leadership role, JJ Watt's a good candidate. Um, Larry Legend leaving, as far as like on the field, like he's still very reliable, but you have D Hopkins and some other pieces for like the actual moments on the field. You're talking more locker room and like keeping the team together. I don't know. Maybe we'll see a Kyler step up in year three, become a bigger voice. Isaiah Simmons is going into his second year. He's extremely talented. Maybe Buda Baker. I think it's probably going to be someone that is not really on our radar, right? Someone that's just like beloved in that locker room, and they might step up outside of the obvious choices of like the names we just listed. I would think it's either one of those elite names or like maybe a X factor that we're not really aware of.
It's probably going to be Colt McCoy. I mean, he's
There
going
we
to.
go.
Nah, yeah. I mean, it's just something you have to factor in, right? When shit gets tough, like you look at the good teams, they have guys in the locker room that when the ship kind of hits the iceberg, they're able to kind of round the troops up and get everything going. And then I just look at the Cardinals and they just have so many kind of like weird like personality guys. Like DeAndre Hopkins is kind of like he's got his own weird personality. Obviously, Kyler Murray does. He's plays video games and he's part of, I believe, Phase on his free time, which is like a gaming group. And then Buda Baker is kind of, I haven't really seen much of his personality, but it's like a lot of personality guys. And then it's like, I don't know, with Larry Fitzgerald, kind of that even keel guy who's good at what he does, but he's also like super level headed. So yeah, you would think JJ Watt, but yeah, maybe, I mean, they have a guy in the locker room who we don't know. Yeah, that we haven't really thought of as a leader that will kind of, if they have a tough loss to so-and-so, they'll be able to round the troops up and kind of keep this ship going. Hey, maybe it'll be Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe he'll show up and do something, kind of push this team forward and maybe get some success. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
goes.
I will say for sure that they're definitely going to miss Larry, whether it's in the locker room or the field, just like him being around. Like that's one of those guys. It feels like if you follow basketball, it makes me think of Udonis Haslem and the Miami Heat. They just kind of keep him around at this point. They're not even worried about him playing games. Like if I'm the Cardinals organization, I just want to keep him around, even if he doesn't even want to suit up.
Exactly. He's just a voice. You know, I mean, guys can go to him, rookies can go to him, Rondell Moore, if he has questions, can go to him. He's just, when he's on the field, he's reliable. And in the locker room, he's a glue guy. He kind of keeps everybody on a straight path. But I mean, really to jump into the final point, you kind of touched on it earlier with the hot seat and Cliff Kingsbury. Was my last point on the Cardinals is, do you think it's really now or never mode for Cliff Kingsbury? He went 35-40 at Texas Tech. So you wouldn't really consider that. He wasn't really a world beater at Texas Tech. And now he's 13-18-1 through 2 seasons in Arizona. And with all this talent and them going out and spending money bringing guys in before a Kyler Murray contract where things are going to get much tighter on the roster. Would you think that Arizona's kind of in now or never mode with Cliff Kingsbury?
Yeah, honestly, I do think so. I don't think it's like Super Bowl or bust like that extreme, but they need to have an above 500 record and probably be a wild card team. I would think. You brought up his Texas Tech record. He had a losing record. He had Mahomes at one point at Texas Tech, by the way, too. And then Arizona 13, I think you said 13, 18, and 1. It's not great, right? And he has a lot of talent. And you bring up Kyle, they're going to have to pay Kyler. So, like, we've seen the recipe for a lot of these young quarterbacks and these teams that make Super Bowls. It goes back to Russell Wilson and Legion of Boom. They had him on a rookie contract. They were able to build up a roster. The Eagles had Carson Wentz on a rookie contract, and they were able to build up the roster. And then that one just kind of worked out for him. Tom Brady, all those years, he took pay cuts all the time. Most people aren't going to take pay cuts. So, like, you really do have to like utilize when your good quarterback is on a rookie contract, and that time's like running out. And unfortunately for the Cardinals, they play the NFC West. It doesn't help them at all. I just don't know if they like. Let's say the Cardinals go slightly above 500 and they're like 9-8 and they barely miss the playoffs. Do you blow it? I wouldn't say blow it up roster wise, but like, do you get a new coach? Do you get rid of
No.
Kingsbury? Because like, I'm surprised he got the job in general with him not winning a ton at Texas Tech.
Yeah, well, I think just him getting the job, was kind of like Arizona kind of wanted a young face, right? And they saw the first pick they could go get Kyler Murray, and it's kind of Kingsbury and Kyler Murray kind of have that connection. They're both, I don't really know how to word it, but I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, young guy, he's kind of hip. Everybody saw him at the draft, the house. He's kind of just like
Yes.
he's that dude, right? Like his record doesn't say he's that guy, right? 35-40 doesn't say he's that guy. 35-40 says he's a younger version of Jeff Fisher. But yeah, 9-8. I mean, I don't think they blow up the project 9-8, right? That probably buys him another year. But I think, yeah, it's kind of like they went out and got all these pieces. They kind of added to what they thought was their weakness. They got some D line. They got, I mean, last I heard, Chandler Jones wanted to trade, but I don't know. He obviously hasn't been moved as of now. So I'd assume he's still going to be on that defense. So they kind of, they added to that side of the ball. And then obviously, I mean, I think they could have went a little more O-line in the draft to kind of build up that roster to feed it more to protect Kyler Murray. But I would say the seat's a little warm. I mean, if they don't really see any improvement, or if it's like a 7-10, even an 8-9 year, I don't think like an 8-9 year, I don't think he gets fired, but I think that really like it ignites the fire. There's kind of the seats on fire. I think the seat's a little warm now. And yeah, I think they're going to at least expect a push for a wild card. I mean, Arizona's front office, I'd imagine they want to push for a division. As you don't kind of go, I would imagine you don't go into a season saying, yeah, all we want to do is we're fine with a wild card, right? Like in this level of division, they think they have just as good a roster as the next team. And but to answer my own question, I would kind of say it is kind of now or never, because once Kyler gets the bag, it's going to kind of tighten up. You won't be able to go get JJ Watts, right? Like that move will not be available. Um, Really, anything else on the Cardinals? Any hypotheticals? Anything to add on to the Cardinals?
Now, I do agree that the front office is going in. They feel like they have a good chance to take the division. They 100% think their roster is just as good or not very far behind the other guys in the division. I think there's definitely a gap.
Yeah. I mean, we'll say it's an any given Sunday type of league. That's what I love about the NFL. So I mean, I guess we'll get into the business portion of this where we make our prediction. As said at the beginning of this, the 8-8 record on the screen is last year's record. So I believe when I went through, DraftKings has the Cardinals win-loss total for the 2021 season. It's set at an over-under of 8.5. I believe when I looked last, the under 8.5 was minus 120, and I want to say over 8.5 was plus 110. So it's a little bit of favoritism to them going under. And when I went through the schedule, I lost exactly what games I took, and obviously we had some technical stuff going on, but I had them at 8 and 9. So they're kind of right in that territory where the seat's going to get warm on Cliff Kingsbury. I just think they're good on paper, but I don't know how healthy. I don't know if JJ Watt's going to survive an entire season. I don't know if Kyler Murray is going to be 100% for the entire season. And I just don't trust Kingsbury at the end of the day as well. I think he'll find ways to lose games as a coach that they could probably win, and that'll ultimately be the downfall of the Cardinals this year.
I'm right there with you. If I could somehow give Arizona a fully healthy roster every game, I would have a lot of confidence in them. But I just have a feeling that like they're going to get beat up again in the second half of the season, or Kyler's going to slow down a little bit down the stretch. I have them finishing 9-8, just a slight improvement. The extra game, they get a W, just above 500, but I think they'll be right around 7 to 9 wins.
There we go. Yeah, I would have liked them to maybe go through some O line in the second round instead of adding Rondell Moore when they already have Christian Kirk, D Hop, just and then they had AJ Green. Weird moves. So, but yeah, we're kind of similar. I mean, I could see them going 9-8 as well, as you said, if they're perfectly healthy. I mean, they could stretch 9 or 10 wins. Now let's jump into the next team we're going to be covering. We're going to be headed up to the great Northwest. We're going to be covering the Seattle Seahawks. They went 12-4 last year, kind of blazing. I believe it was a blazing start, and then they kind of it was a blazing start for Russell Wilson, right? And then he got all weird in the second half of the season, where like they really got super weird on offense and kind of struggled at times, and ultimately led to their downfall in the offseason. They had Gerald Everett at tight end. They traded with the Raiders. They kind of jumped in on the Raiders garage sale of O linemen and had Gabe Jackson in there at right guard to protect Russell Wilson. They had defensive tackle Al Woods, Robert Kimdichie, and Kerry Hyder kind of bolster up that front four that's kind of been giving them issues. They had Akilla Witherspoon from the 49ers to play corner. And then they drafted Dwayne Eskridge, a wide receiver, in the second round. So that's another target to go with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And on the other side of the ball, obviously the Eskridge pick, they lose David Moore. They lose KJ Wright and Bruce Irvin. Bruce Irvin coming off I believe it was an ACL or an Achilles last year. Jaron Reed departed to Kansas City. They lose Carlos Hyde. And then the big one was they lost Shaq Griffin in the secondary. I guess we'll just get right into it. I mean, how do you feel about the Seahawks? They've kind of been a staple. I mean, as long as I've said it, even at the beginning of this thing, as long as number 3 is quarterback in that team, they're going to be a competitive team. So how do you feel about the Seahawks going into this year?
Yeah, the Seahawks are interesting. As long as, like you said, as long as Russell Wilson's quarterbacking, I think they're going to be above 500. I would pick them as a wild card team. 12-4. I don't think they were really as good as their record said last year. Um, their O line and D line leaves a lot to be desired. Russ is always running for his life, and luckily, Russell Wilson's so good, right? He can make plays with his legs or just extend plays long enough to where he just makes some magic happen. But like you brought it up about how Seattle slowed down the stretch. Their offense was just kind of like really predictable. DK Metcalf's on record of talking about this in some other podcasts in the offseason because they were asking him like what went wrong in the second half of the season. Why couldn't they really get the offense going? Because the first half it was let Russ cook and he was an MVP candidate and everything was going well. Then all of a sudden he started throwing interceptions. They couldn't push the ball down the field and the offense really stagnated, which shouldn't happen when you have Metcalf, Lockett, Carson, you have good weapons, and Russell. Metcalf talked about how they just got figured out offensively, that there wasn't a lot of creativity. They were just trying to push the ball down the field, vertical routes, and like not enough. I think not enough pre-snap motion and things to fool the defense. Like so this is a Pete Carroll led football team, and let's compare him to real quick to the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. If you watch Shanahan's offense, which he's known for like being, we'll talk about that, he's known for an offensive guru, all that jazz, ton of pre-snap motion, a ton of fooling the defense, trying to figure out where the ball's going. And I don't think Seattle needs to like incorporate to that degree at all, but they just needed a little creativity offensively to like, so they don't get figured out and they keep the defense on their toes more. Cause the weapons they have, they should have been better like down the stretch, but they really just couldn't figure it out down the stretch. The defense has got good tape on them, and just kind of once they shut down like the long pass or like those chunk plays, they really couldn't move the ball well. So like if I'm Seattle, I want to see like pre-snap motion, some more creativity, and just like let Russ cook with those weapons. Just get creative with it because they can run any kind of routes and do anything you want offensively. They can do it efficiently.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, they ran a lot of the Madden 4 verticals offense, and then and this kind of, if nothing's there, let Russell Wilson do something with his feet to give you some positive yardage. Obviously, they still have Chris Carson in the backfield. They could run him. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty bland offense, right? Tyler Lockett, straight line runner, really. DK Metcalf, as good as he is, I mean, more of a just a straight line guy. I mean, he has a little better route running than he gets credit for, but he's kind of that's really, yeah, they got trapped into kind of their own game. And last year when it came down to it, yeah, they didn't look like they really had a plan B, right? They had plan A. And then when that was figured out, it was kind of, oh shit, we can't pivot to anything because we really don't have a plan B. And as you touched on, yeah, the defensive line and the offensive line, the offensive line has been abysmal for a while now. It's really crazy. It's and that's really my first question. Are you concerned at all that Dwayne Brown, he's been at practice, but he hasn't practiced at all through training camp, and we're now 2 weeks out, and Jamal Adams got an extension, right? Jamal Adams got an extension. Dwayne Brown's sitting there like, I want an extension. Russell Wilson probably wants his left tackle to get an extension too, I'd imagine, right? If there's money in the budget to extend Jamal Adams, the guy that's going to be protecting his blind side, I would assume he wants him to get extended. Is that concerning that it's kind of it looks like it's going to be Dwayne Brown, no training camp, no preseason reps at all, kind of week one, let's rev up the engines. Or does that concern you at all?
That does concern me, honestly, just because like the offensive line play has been so bad the last couple years, and you're talking about probably your best lineman, your franchise Super Bowl winning quarterback wants him signed, sign the man. Like you don't, when you find guys like Russell Wilson, you do whatever it takes to keep them happy as an organization. Like you do not want to lose those guys. We already saw how the offseason got a little hectic for Seattle with, rumors swirling everywhere about does Russ want out? Does he not want out? Well, he's here. He's here for the season, but like you want to keep him happy, right? And that would concern me just because the offensive line as a unit has not played well. And like Dwayne Brown's a veteran. He's a very, very good tackle. He knows what he's doing, but like it takes reps, right? No matter how good you are, you need to practice and get reps. So it's like it is concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's done this before. He did this in Houston before he obviously was traded out of Houston, but he actually didn't show up at all for the Texans. Yeah, I'd say it concerns me. I mean, he's a 35-year-old left tackle. That's right. It's not like he's 22 years old, fresh off the block, right? There's miles on the tires, and as an older player, I don't know if you're just going to go from 0 to 100 on week one, because I'm going to imagine he's going to be there week one, right? Like, I doubt he's going to just be like, yeah, I'm not playing at all. He's going to sit there. He's not going to practice. And then when it's game time, he'll show up. But it's like, yeah, for an O-line, it's kind of a chemistry thing too, right? Like everybody wants to have that chemistry, even if I don't think Russell Wilson's taken a snap this preseason. Doesn't really matter. I could be wrong on that as well, but I don't think he has. It's kind of, you just want to continue to build that chemistry, especially with an offense that's probably going to try out new things going into the season. To not have your starting left tackle there, who's been a Pro Bowler before, it's super concerning on my end. I mean, I know Russell Wilson will find a way to get it done. He's crafty enough with the legs. But I just worry for injury, right? And then it's kind of one of those things where it's like, they'll somehow try to like spin it onto the NFL, but it's like you kind of got to look at it as this guy didn't show up all off season, and are the Seahawks kind of fumbling the bag by not just giving him the money, knowing you're eventually going to crack anyway. They cracked with Jamal Adams, and I mean, it's kind of weird to me that Russell Wilson hasn't said, "Hey, sign this guy, or I'm out after the year, or I'm going to dip," because obviously he has that kind of power, right? If he doesn't want to play there, and they want to fool around. There's kind of whispers of that in the past year as well, that he wanted out, but obviously that did not happen. But yeah, I'd say it concerns me. I mean, shaky O-line to begin with. Gabe Jackson's there, but kind of want the whole unit churning as a group, rather than just having your starting left tackle miss the entire offseason program. Guess for the next one, looking at this team, they kind of, the Seahawks, they addressed the front issue when they went out with Kerry Hyder. They get Al Woods, Robert Kimdichie, not really like barn burners, not really like all pros, but they're just like, they're solid veterans that can come in and fill a spot on a front four that definitely needs help. But when I look at now the back end, when you look at Seattle's secondary, so they lose Shaq Griffin, who was really their number one corner for the past couple of years. Do you think that secondary is now going to take a step back? Obviously, they still have Jamal Adams, but I mean, if you really watch Jamal Adams, he kind of hates it, like how people look at him, but he's really like a linebacker stuck in a safety's body. I mean, I might get shit for that comment, but it's kind of when you look at the stats, he has like 21, 22 career sacks and 2 picks. So it's like he's a solid defender, but are they going to have issues in coverage this year?
I think they are. They had issues last year. Like they weren't always. They just got beat from time to time, right? Like I know every team does, but like they definitely had games where like it was just offensive shootouts because the defense was leaking. Yeah, and the Jamal Adams point, it's like I've heard him talk about how he hates that like people don't think he can cover and all that, but like you said, he's got like 2 picks and a ton of sacks. I think he like led the team in sacks, or he was right up there. He was a top 3 in sacks for the Seahawks, and that's your safety. Like, yeah, he's more of a linebacker, great for stuff in the box. He got that big contract, which was like he's deserving. Don't get me wrong. Like everybody should get their money. I'm always a fan of players getting paid, but I don't know if it's like the best move for the Seahawks, but we'll see. I am worried about that defense. I just think all these things. So we're like, you're talking about the offensive line, the secondary, all these things just put more pressure on Russell. They just, wherever the holes are in the roster, they expect Russell Wilson to just make up for it somehow, just to be good enough. Kind of how Green Bay did to Aaron Rodgers forever with those terrible defenses. They just expect Aaron to be good enough to make up for it. And I think they're doing the same thing with Russell. They're just expecting him to make up for it. And he can up to a point, but like he can't make up those gaps enough to where you can be a legitimately like back in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then I completely forgot about, I believe Quandre Diggs is holding out as well. I know he's tweeting quite a bit that like he wants an extension as well. He thinks he's outdone what he is valued at. But yeah, I mean, when you look at their corners, their depth chart right now, Akilla Witherspoon and DJ Reed. Akilla Witherspoon, a free agent pickup off of a division rival. So it's like when you look at a team like the 49ers, if they didn't think of bringing him back, how good could he be? They have Trey Flowers still, but it's just like, yeah, that whole I just look at their defensive depth chart now. Yeah, their defense. I don't even know if it's just the secondary. It's kind of the whole package. Really concerns me. I mean, I know Jamal Adams will probably get another 10 sacks this year. He'll probably lead the team. And I think he had 9.5 last year. And
Yep.
he's a beast doing that. Obviously, Bobby Wagner's there, but yeah, I just think they're gonna be a bad unit again. I don't like what's back there, and yeah, that's all I can say. I don't like the pieces that are back there. It's weird to see this flip flop, obviously, from years ago when it was really the defense carrying the Seahawks and the offense doing just enough or just what they had to now it's really all on Russell Wilson's shoulders. And I mean, I trust Russell Wilson. I don't think he really feels you can kind of put it on him. I don't think he feels pressure, but I'm concerned about that defense. A lot. I think that defense could ultimately cost them games this season. And then really my last thing on the Seahawks that I had written down here is do you think the Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, and now they have a new offensive coordinator, I forget his first name, I think it's Shane Waldron, but do you think that trio, do you think all those guys are on the same page? Obviously the rumblings Russell Wilson won it out. Dating back to last year, now the left tackle issue with Dwayne Brown. Do you think all these guys are kind of on the same page heading into this season?
Heading into the season, they're on the same page, like goal wise, but I don't think they're really on the same page of how to get there. Pete Carroll is an older head coach. He's won a lot of football games running the ball well and playing good defense. The Legion of Boom era was phenomenal defense with Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson doing just enough here and there. The team has flipped entirely, like you stated. It's all on Russell Wilson. It's a pass first offense now, and the defense kind of just bleeds. I think there's just different philosophies in Seattle on how to win football games. Pete Carroll's been very successful, and I think he is adapting. Don't get me wrong; he's not like stuck in his ways per se, but he does favor a certain style ball. He would still like to give Chris Carson a ton of runs and the defense play well. I'm sure that's his favorable way, but like when the Russell Wilson trade rumors were kind of swirling in the off season, it was pretty clear that Pete Carroll has quite a bit of power in that organization and he makes a lot of decisions. So I don't know if that's like they either need to figure out a way to like get him and Russell closer on the decisions and closer to the same page, or like one of them, I think if they're not like very successful this year, one of them might end up like going in a different direction down the road.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the same page they're on. Obviously, I think they both, all the three, the trio, as far as fixing the offense and winning football games, I think they're all kind of in that same mindset. But then, yeah, as you mentioned, Pete Carroll kind of has his ways, and then it's like the team's not really constructed to play to that way of football. So it's like weird to say this, but it's kind of like Pete Carroll might have ran his course in Seattle. That it's like it could be almost the end of an era there. As you said, he is older, right? It's like he got his Super Bowl. Um, I just, yeah, I mean, if they can't really figure it out, it's kind of Russell Wilson's kind of already shown he can force his way out of Seattle if he really wants to. And then it's like at that point, if Russell Wilson wants to force his way out, is there any point in Pete Carroll really sticking around if he's going to dip? Like if there's no way to repair that relationship with Seattle, and then yeah, I mean the other way, I don't know if they'd ever fire him though, right? It's like kind of weird. Like I think they'll be good enough to where he would never really get fired, and he's kind of like a staple of that franchise. Um,
Well,
as
if you're that franchise and things kind of go sideways, right? I mean, and you're talking about maybe trading Russell Wilson and then Pete Carroll leaves anyway. Like, I would do whatever it takes to keep Russell, then like get rid of Pete Carroll if I have to. Pete Carroll's going to be 70. Like, he's had a great career, and I'm sure he can land somewhere else if he wants to coach still. People will take Pete Carroll. He's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But like, if I'm the Seahawks and I got to make a choice hypothetically between the two, I'm taking Russell Wilson.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's always player over coach. I don't even know if we'll come to that. I mean, it'll maybe come to the point where Russell Wilson's had his fun in Seattle and he wants to move on. It's kind of like when you start hearing those rumblings, I kind of just think like it could be coming to an end. And we kind of saw NBA, right, the player movement era when that kind of begun, and we're kind of starting to see that kind of take form in the NFL with the quarterbacks, at least when you see Tom Brady pick up his bags and go to Tampa Bay, and then you see Aaron Rodgers kind of take control of the Green Bay situation. It's like I could very easily see Russell Wilson jumping right in there and saying, "Hey, I want to. We've had a good tenure, and it's kind of his time to move on." Now, obviously, they'd probably try everything similar to what Green Bay did, but yeah, I mean, to answer the original question, I think they're on the same page as they want to win football games, but I just don't know if they're equipped to do it in a way that satisfies both Pete Carroll and kind of keeps Russell Wilson honed in as well. Um, I mean, that's really all I have on Seattle, unless you have any type of additive, any other questions, topics you'd like to talk on Seattle.
No, I like watching the Seahawks. I've always been a Russell Wilson guy. I'm going to be watching most of the games this year, if not all of the Seahawks games. It's just gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. They last year when they went 12-4, they like were almost they either had one loss or like undefeated in like coin flip one possession game. So like I don't know if that's sustainable going into this year either. So it's gonna be interesting to see where like they actually land at the end of the year.
Exactly. Now, I want to say we'll get to the business portion of this as I pull up. I believe it was 10 and a half. I want to say that was what Seattle, no, it was 10. Okay, so Seattle, yeah, for 2021 DraftKings has the Seahawks win total set flat at 10 right now. Looking at it, the under 10 is favored at minus 120, and the over 10 is plus 100. So obviously, it's always fairly close with these, but the bettors are favoring the under 10. When I went through and did mine, I had them going 10-7. I just think that defense is going to cost them games at time. And I don't really know how much Pete Carroll and the group really did in the offseason that's really going to change the bread and butter of this offense, right? It's not like they really drastically changed the O-line that much. They're going to get back to being a power run team. And obviously they don't have the defense to kind of do that, like to just control games and just, you can get a field goal and know that your defense is going to get you 2 or 3 takeaways a game, kind of put the ball back in Russell Wilson's hands. So, I mean, I think they'll be a competitive team, obviously, because I like Russell Wilson. I like DK Metcalf, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett. And Dwayne Eskridge should be pretty good as a rookie, but I think that defense and O-line and just kind of the whole combination of things, I think we'll see swirling rumors in Seattle kind of towards the middle and the end of the season. So I had them going 10-7.
I'm right there with you. I got them at 10-7. I think there's just going to be a lot of coin flip games. And like I said earlier, they won most of them last year, but that's so hard to sustain. I would assume they win some and lose some this year. Tough division. I think they'll be a good team, right? You got Russell. There's a lot of positives on this roster. I think they'll be either just miss the playoffs or be one of the wild card teams.
Yeah, exactly. It should be interesting. I mean, they're going to be a fun team to watch, really, regardless of what happens. Like Russell Wilson's always exciting, and then DK Metcalf and those guys. But let's jump in straight down the West Coast to the next team on the map in the NFC West. Kind of the team that made, I'd say, one of the probably the second biggest, actually maybe the biggest splash. Like they went out and got a brand new quarterback, kind of put that over a JJ Watt move. It's going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They went 10-6 last year. Obviously, the departure of Jared Goff, they bring in Matt Stafford. They think he's kind of the missing link, big arm. It's going to be interesting to see Matt Stafford kind of finally outside of that Detroit bubble and not really stuck there. Another addition for their offense, obviously Cam Akers with the Achilles injury. They went out this week and added Sony Michel from New England. Power runner they kind of needed that guy that can just eat up carries in the offense. And then they also had Deshaun Jackson and then added Tutu Atwell, another wide receiver in the second round. So they went heavy on the offensive weapons. And then obviously they lost Josh Reynolds, Gerald Everett, who went to Seattle. They lose center Austin Blythe. They lose defensive end Morgan Fox, defensive end / linebacker Samson Ebukam. Then they lose John Johnson and Troy Hill. It's kind of just that thing you see when you have Aaron Donald, you got Jalen Ramsey, you got Matt Stafford, all big contracts. Cooper Kupp as a contract. You're just going to lose guys, and you got to find ways to patch it up through the draft. So, I mean, going into the season, obviously, I'm excited to see the Rams and how kind of that offense looks with Matt Stafford. What do you think about the Rams going into this thing?
I'm really excited to watch the Rams. Matthew Stafford, not in Detroit. He has a great offensive coach. We've seen what those Rams teams can do when they're really clicking, when the quarterback's playing well, they get good running backs. Running back play back in the day with Todd Gurley. And then you just see how lethal that offense is when they're really going. And then you add to like Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, how good that defense is. Aaron Donald's probably the best player in football, right? And then Jalen Ramsey's probably the best cornerback in football. You have them on the same defense. That's a phenomenal unit. Probably the best unit in the league. There is a lot of good defensive units. The Rams are right there. I really like this team. I think Matthew Stafford can make all the throws you want. He's extremely talented. He had a couple decent Detroit teams, but he never had like an elite roster. This is probably the best roster he's ever played with, best head coach. So like the sky's the limit for the Rams. Like I would not be shocked if they represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, probably best head coach has been with him. Yeah, obviously, easily probably the greatest defense. I mean, he did, I believe, he had Megatron with him when he played there for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, when you have those guys on defense and kind of that defensive unit, they lose pieces. But I mean, when you still have Aaron Donald and you got Jalen Ramsey back there, it's going to be a top-notch unit. So I mean, I'm going to get right into it with the Rams. Is Matt Stafford, is he the missing link for this team? Is he really, if Matt Stafford was there in Green Bay last year, do they get by the Packers? Is he the guy to send them to the Super Bowl once again? Obviously, we saw Jared Goff take them there, I believe it was 2 years ago now.
I like that you brought up the Green Bay point because I was actually going to say that. The game was pretty close with Jared Goff at quarterback. It's not like Green Bay ran away or like dominated him or anything. I would think that Matthew Stafford's Rams do better for sure. I don't know if he's the missing link all the way to the point where they actually are the champions and win the Super Bowl, but like I would think they're good enough for sure for at least a conference championship appearance. They're a better team now with Matthew Stafford than they were with Jared Goff. They were a divisional round exit last year. I think they can certainly improve and do better than that.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Stafford can certainly sling the rock around quite a bit. Yeah, I don't know if he's exactly the missing link. There's so many things that happen throughout an NFL season that it's hard to say that this one parts of the team that we haven't seen on a football field at game speed with this group and the offense. STS. I don't know if he's exactly like the missing link. Yeah, Matt Stafford and Super Bowl champions right away. But I mean, definitely it's an upgrade at the position. He can make every throw, as you mentioned before, and it kind of unlocks everything that Sean McVay can kind of do throwing wise in the offense. It does kind of concern me that maybe now that Sean McVay has a Matt Stafford who can make every throw, does he get a little daring and get a little too throw crazy and start slinging it a bunch and kind of putting Matt Stafford back there to kind of try to do everything instead of maybe relying on the run game and kind of just letting that defense kind of old Seahawks style, letting that defense kind of feed you the game and not really having to do too much on the offensive side of the football. That'll be a question that we'll see in 2 weeks. I mean, I'm excited. Another big question really about the Rams is, do you think they kind of overvalued going out and adding offense, weapons wise, right? Matt Stafford, Sony Michel, Deshaun Jackson, Tutu Atwell. But did they kind of neglect the adding to the O-line, their O-line depths thin? Tutu Atwell, they drafted him in the second. I believe he had like a fourth or a fifth round grade. So he might have been down the board late and they could have went with either a guard or a tackle to kind of add depth to their O-line. Obviously, we've seen O-lines that get decimated. We watched the Chiefs O-line get decimated, and we saw how that turned out down the stretch. So do you think that they may be overvalued going after weapons and kind of feeding more weapons to Sean McVay instead of going for the trenches and kind of protecting Matt Stafford and kind of creating gaps for that run game with the O-line?
I don't know if they overvalued it. It's always nice to get more weapons, right? They lost. They've seen seasons where the Cooper Cup went down, and then Todd Gurley was never the same. So like they're familiar with losing weapons halfway through the year, and it gets tough. Um, I never liked the idea of like not bolstering the O line or getting depth there because that's just so crucial and so important. And if the O line crumbles, the whole team crumbles, right? So like I never liked that, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily overvalued per se because like you said, Tutu Atwell had a lower draft grade. They drafted him with the 57th pick in the second round. Sony Michel was very good in that Super Bowl run. He hasn't been great as of late. He's been banged up. Deshaun Jackson can't get healthy for like seems like a month at a time. He can't even play a full month without getting hurt. He's older. So like the pieces they added are like good depth pieces offensively. I just don't think they're overvalued because they're not like elite pieces, but I never liked the idea of passing on O-line depth.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird because I mean, when you look at the Rams, they have Robert Woods, they have Cooper Cup, they have Von Jefferson, who they drafted the last year from Florida, and then they add Deshaun Jackson. It's like, is there a need to add Tutu Atwell, who's currently like the fifth wide receiver, right? When you're kind of a cap strap team, you don't really want to waste second round picks on a guy that's going to be the fifth wide receiver on your depth chart. Yeah, Deshaun Jackson might go down. Okay, we'll bump him up to fourth. The way that Sean McVay really runs the offense, how many times is the fourth wide receiver really going to see the field? You know, Tyler Higbee's going to be out there. You know, they're going to obviously have a running back on the field. So it's just like, I feel a guy that you could have got later when you could just bolster your O-line and kind of get the trenches, as we've seen injuries to teams' O-lines. I just don't know. Adding an older injured Deshaun Jackson, then overvaluing a guy like Tutu Atwell, who we don't even know how many targets he's going to see this year. Just comes back to a team that has such little cap because of that defense, right? They're spending so much on that defense. I just think you can't afford to go out and per se waste picks. Now I could look like an idiot in 2 weeks and Tutu Atwell go for 3 catches for $150 and 2 touchdowns. I'm willing to go out there and kind of be that guy to look like an idiot, but I'm kind of big on bolster the trenches when you're a team that's kind of already set in place, right? You can go get veterans to run routes. And I mean, if you have Sean McVay, who's this prolific offensive genius at head coach, do you really need to keep adding and adding and adding for a guy who can kind of scheme guys, as we've seen, who Kyle Shanahan, who we'll talk about later, take guys like Raheem Mostert, who are kind of cast-offs, and kind of really throw any running back into that offense. We saw Jeff Wilson, not to jump too far ahead, but he gets productivity out of guys that you don't really expect it. So it's kind of, I would just like to see them go more after bolstering their O-line instead of spending so much or really overvaluing or overdrafting a weapon when you could have got that guy later, especially with Matt Stafford. He's not really a mobile quarterback, right? He's not really It's not really a Russell Wilson. He's not a guy that's really going to create plays with the feet. He's going to kind of sit back there and pick you apart with the arm in the pocket. So that's just really my thought on that. My really last thing with the Rams, it goes back to they added Sony Michel this week. I mean, how bad will the Cam Akers injury kind of hurt that offense? Do you think it's going to hamper them a little bit now that they don't kind of have that lead horse in the backfield to kind of take pressure off the quarterback and really kind of kickstart that offense, right? They have a run game that really opens up the whole Sean McVay play action and read plays for the quarterback.
I think they'll have a pretty efficient run game still, just between Scheme and Daryl Henderson and Sony Michel. I think the Cam Akers injury really hurts them. Still really hurts them, just like depth wise and getting through the season, because like running backs take so many hits, and like you want depth at the running back position. Obviously, it's football; you want depth everywhere, right? But they take so many hits and they get so beat up that like it becomes difficult. So Daryl Henderson, he's had games where he's been the lead back, but he's never been a lead back for like a full season. Sony Michel was banged up. So I think Sean McVay will figure out how to get that offense going and get the run game going, and it will be efficient. I just don't know if they have enough bodies to get through the entire season. I'd be shocked if they're not adding guys throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Cam Akers out offense completely shuts down and it's garbage, but obviously Cam Akers a little bit more explosive. It's kind of really showed that he's that explosive guy out of the backfield that can kind of be your lead horse that you want. You just want to be able to pound the rock with a guy like that. And I don't know if Sony Michel. Well, I definitely know that Sony Michel doesn't bring that. Considering Bill Belichick, it would get pissed handing it to that guy at the goal line and watching him get stuffed. So yeah, I mean, I think they'll be able to find production. Yeah, Daryl Henderson, he's a good enough back, and obviously you said the scheme with that little bit of zone run scheme, it'll be able to create openings for plays to happen. But I mean, I'd say they'll see a little bit of just that explosiveness out of the backfield take a dip without a guy like Cam Akers. And yeah, I think they will mid-year be trying to see if a veteran running back's on the market, or if anybody, Le'Veon Bell is going to probably be out there on the market. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they go give him a call and say, you want to come out to LA and try to win a Super Bowl. And maybe, as you said, just add another body to shoulder the load, because we see running backs get so beat up. Yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, yeah, I don't know the names off the top of my head, but they're like who's on the market, but I would be shocked if they're not adding a couple of veterans just for depth. Like I don't see how they get through the season with just that.
Yeah, off the top, Le'Veon Bell, I don't know if Shady retired, to be honest, but
yeah, I thought of Shady, but he didn't look very efficient the last time he was playing.
Nope. But yeah, I mean, that's really, I mean, the Rams, sky's the limit. That defense is still there. Jalen Ramsey locked down. And as you said, Aaron Donald, probably the most, I don't know about, I don't like to say best player because it's like so weird, but he's definitely the most dominant player in the league, I would say. Like that guy is a monster. So with those dudes carrying the defense, Matt Stafford out there, that team should be humming regardless of who's in the backfield, even if they lose a little bit of explosiveness. So, I mean, jumping into the prediction side of this, I got to pull up. I want to say, I think the Rams were 10.5. Yeah, here it is. So the Rams, yeah, their 2020 win-loss, 2021 win-loss over under total is set at 10.5. So it's a half game more than the Seattle Seahawks. And right now the under 10.5 is -140 and the over 10.5 is +120. So obviously the bettors as to this point are favoring that under 10.5. And when I went through just with the division and just everything that's going on, I had them going 10-7. So it's right at that mark. They'll be a competitive, good football team, but it's just like you just playing a war zone. The NFC West is a war zone. You're going to get beat up playing those teams. And it's like you'll find a way to slip up against somebody else. I don't have the technology where I have the schedule right at my hand, like previous episodes of this, which I wish I had. But yeah, I had them 10-7. They're going to be good. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win more than 10 games, but I think 10's it was the perfect number for me going through.
I have them finishing a little bit better than that. I got them at 12-5. I will admit their schedule is incredibly tough. Obviously, the division is tough, but they're getting like Colts, Bears, Buccaneers, Titans, Ravens, Packers, and then all their division games. So like, yeah, they have an incredibly tough schedule, but I believe in Sean McVay as a coach. They've shown for the last few years since McVay's been there that they're a winning culture, winning franchise, winning team. And I think they just improved, and they're bringing back one of the best defensive units in football. So it's like, I just think they'll figure out a way to win 10 plus games. I got them at 12-5.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to win 11, 12 ball games either. They just have that much. They have a lot of talent. It's tough to predict these, I would say. Um, well, really jumping into the last team, obviously last but not least, the San Francisco 49ers. Last year, down year, obviously everybody on the roster, it seemed, got hurt against the New York Jets. You saw their entire team say the turf blows at the Meadowlands or at MetLife Stadium. That turf needs to be replaced. Can't be playing on that. And that ultimately, when Nick Bosa goes down, a couple of the guys go down. That led into a 6-10 year. One could say that helps them going into this year. When you look at their schedule this year, it kind of favors them. Obviously, their big addition this offseason was they went with Trey Lance, quarterback from North Dakota State, with the 3rd overall pick. It was rumored it could have been Mac Jones, but obviously they settled on, I think, which was the better pick. Obviously, Mac Jones could be good. I think just Trey Lance has more weapons in the bag and really opens up Kyle Shanahan's offense. So they went with him 3rd overall. They went with guard Aaron Banks in the 2nd round to bolster their O-line. And then they added running back Trey Sermon from Ohio State in the 3rd round, another running back. We know Kyle Shanahan loves using those running backs, and he just loves that. Another one. Then they add on the offensive line again. They went Alex Mack, played with the Falcons last year, solid center to play there for the retiring Weston Richburg. They add also Samson Ebukam, took him from a division rival. They'll find a way to piece him in there. They added Tony Jefferson in the secondary. They had Maurice Hurst as well in the defensive line. And then they had veteran wide receiver Mohamed Sanu. And then when you look at their losses, they lose Tevin Coleman. I don't really think that's a huge one. They have Raheem Mostert. They bring in Trey Sermon. They just have so many guys in the backfield. They lose Solomon Thomas along the D-line. He didn't really pan out after being drafted high. They lose Kerry Hyder, Akilla Witherspoon, Jarek McKinnon, another guy, 52 knee injuries. Never really panned out. And San Fran, obviously, Richburg retires, and they lost Richard Sherman in the secondary. I love really the 49ers going into this year, regardless of really who takes the reins at quarterback. How do you feel about the 49ers heading into 2021?
Yeah, I love the 49ers heading into this year. Their last place season last year and like all the injuries is like a blessing in disguise because they have a much easier schedule. And they represented the NFC just 2 years ago. That was not a long time ago. They're going to get that roster healthy. And I love the draft picks. Trey Lance is going to be fun to watch. He's just in with Kyle Shanahan as coach and being able to do all those pre-snap motions and be able to throw on the run and really push the ball down the field. I don't think he's going to get the reins to start. Like, I definitely think Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback week 1 when the season starts, no doubt. But once Trey Lance gets going, and if hopefully it's this year, he gets the team, he's just better. Like, he's just more talented. Like, he's a better prospect. And if it pans out and you get Kyle Shanahan to help you out, like, that's pretty much as good as it gets. Phenomenal roster, great running backs, good offensive line, great receivers, great tight end. So phenomenal weapons. The sky's the limit. I really like this Niners squad.
Yeah, I love the addition of Trey Lance. I was glad that they went with Trey Lance at 3 instead of Mac Jones. I just think all the intangibles, the leg, the arm, he just looks like a natural. Just watching him in the preseason, he just has such an effortless throwing motion. And I don't like to weigh too much in the preseason, but it's like just seeing him sling the ball around. He just looks so comfortable back there for a guy that's played not really that many snaps at North Dakota State. Obviously only played 1 game last year. And then I believe he only started for 1 year as well as a whole before that, but for the whole COVID season. And then, really going into my first question about the 49ers is how close is Trey Lance to stealing Jimmy Garoppolo's job? How close do you think he is to taking the reins from Jimmy G?
I think it's pretty close, to be honest. You can't put a lot of weight into preseason games. I do understand that. Trey Lance has played well for the most part. Jimmy G has not looked great. I just think he's putting a lot of pressure on Jimmy G and the staff because he's just playing well. Uh, Jimmy G doesn't have a lot of room for error. The team, if you remember in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, there was a moment where he could have stepped up in the pocket and delivered a nice pass to Emmanuel Sanders. They would have took the lead, and there's a good chance they would have won the Super Bowl in that case. He kind of whiffed on that, and I think that's like kind of Jimmy Garoppolo in a nutshell right there. He's like a good serviceable quarterback, but when you like really need him to make like a really good just quarterback play, he's not he is capable. He's not like a terrible player at all, but he's a serviceable quarterback. He's good, maybe slightly above average, but like Trey Lance looks like he has all the intangibles to be elite. And like he's going to be very good in San Francisco for a long time, I feel like.
Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo just looks like a guy with no confidence. That's what I've seen. It's kind of they brought in Trey Lance with the third overall pick. He kind of from that moment on, you kind of know the writing is really on the wall. And yeah, I think Trey Lance is like right on his tail, but it's like Kyle Shanahan is going to be smart about it. He's going to kind of respect Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, he was the quarterback that I wouldn't necessarily say got them to the Super Bowl, but he was the starting quarterback when they made it to the Super Bowl. So he's kind of giving him every opportunity to kind of hold down the fort and keep his job. But I mean, I think Trey Lance is literally right there. And I think their bye week, I want to say they play the Packers, Seahawks, Cardinals. And then after the Cardinals game's a bye week and they play the Colts at home. I mean, I'm going to just go out there and say Trey Lance is starting that Colts game. At home. I think at some point within that stretch of Packers, Seahawks, Cardinals, they'll get fed up enough with Jimmy Garoppolo. And he just doesn't seem like he has confidence. The preseason, he hasn't really looked good, right? Preseason, he could have came out and just shut everybody up and just kind of played football and been him and say, look, this is still my job. They brought in Trey Lance. Yeah, he'll be next year's guy. But he's kind of let that really seep into his head. And yeah, Trey Lance, I would say, is on his tail. I mean, it could arguably be sooner, but I think that Shannon will give enough respect. They kind of have an easy start. They play the Lions, Eagles, and then they jump into like a Packers game. But the defense is good enough where they could, or the up front, I should say, the front four is good enough where they could steal a game or two there to kind of survive and keep the Jimmy Garoppolo era going. But I expect at least midway through the season, Trey Lance will take the reins. And then obviously in the offseason, they'll move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think it's like razor thin. Yeah, go for it.
No, I just agree. I agree entirely. It's razor thin. He's going to take it from. I'd be shocked if Trey Lance by the end of the year is not the starting quarterback, which means if I believe the Niners are going to be as good as they are, that means I believe Trey Lance will be starting their playoff games.
Yeah, I just think the scheme's good enough. Scheme, and then he's just that comfortable. He just seems like a natural, as I said back there. And then I think Kyle Shanahan's that smart with the zone run scheme to kind of take a ton of pressure off of a rookie quarterback. He doesn't really have to make that many decisions in year one, and he can kind of go into the next year and really open up the playbook a little bit more. Since the team's kind of really solid, it was kind of hard to drum up more questions, but my second point is, do you think they can find a reliable like third wide receiver on there? We saw they have Debo and Brandon Ayuk. Debo, obviously, it seemed like he was injured every other week last year. They have George Kittle, who kind of battled his injuries as well last year. But do you think they'll find kind of that third guy? You think they kind of brought Mohamed Sanu in maybe to be that veteran guy to catch some passes? I forget who else they have out there. They have Trent Sheffield. I believe that's the guy that's like balling out in the preseason every week. I see Trey Lance throwing dots to him down the field. Do you think they'll find a reliable like third guy? Say Debo Samuel gets hurt again, or Brandon Ayuk goes down, and they need a guy to kind of step in and do something. You think they'll find that third guy in the offense?
Yeah, I think it's who you said already, Trent Sherfield. Like he's been playing well. I'm sure Sanu will get snaps. He's the veteran. He's going to be a good locker room presence. I would just don't think he would beat him out. Maybe he will, but I would assume that's their third wide receiver. I don't even think they're going to use a third wide receiver that much, right? You got George Kittle, and they're going to be using multiple running backs. You know, I'm sure he's going to ease Trey Sermon into the offense, but just like Trey Lance, once both of those guys are in the offense and going, it's going to be really, really good. And of course, you have Raheem Mostert, who's incredibly fast still. Love Debo Samuel, love Brandon Ayuk. But yeah, I would guess it's Trent Sherfield, honestly. Maybe Mohamed Sanu. But I don't
Yeah.
think they need a lot of production from those guys.
Yeah. Right now on the depth chart, it is Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Mohamed Sanu. I forgot about Juszczyk too at fullback. They kind of use him interesting enough. Just Kyle Shanahan's so good with the offense that it's like, as you said, they might not even need that third guy. But then it's like always interesting if somebody gets banged up, if an Ayuk gets banged up or a Samuel gets banged up, you kind of need that whoever your third option is to kind of step up and be a two option because obviously defenses are going to focus on a guy like George Kittle who's that dominant. But yeah, they just have so much up there. The scheme is so well drawn up that it really doesn't matter. Like they have so many good backs. Like uh, it's hard. I don't even know. As I said, it was hard to really drum up questions for a team that kind of has this much talent on the roster. Like you're really we're kind of fetching. I was fetching for questions out here going into this season.
Yeah, it's just so fun to watch, right? With the scheme and how talented they are. You line up and you put George Kittle, Samuel, Ayuk, and you could even have Mostert and Sermon on the field at the same time if you're doing two running backs. And then you put them in pre-snap motion, and you got maybe the receiver going to the backfield or flipping sides, or you got the running back moving to the left or right side. It's just like it's very hard to defend, and there's a lot going on. So like the defense has to be on their toes and make their reads fast with the pre-snap motion, and then they have to the reads have to be correct. And then they also have to be able to cover all those guys. It's just the offense is going to be lethal.
Yeah. And Rose, yeah. Well, yeah, really my last question about the 49ers then is how will they fare in the secondary? We know what they're having returning up on the front four. Obviously, Nick Bosa is coming back. Eric Armstead's going to be back. They have Javon Kinlaw, who they drafted last year. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. They got those guys. But I mean, when you look at at least corner wise, they're kind of thin out there. They're kind of relying on another Jason Verrett, solid, healthy season. Don't miss games. They have Emmanuel Mosley, Ambry Thomas, Kawan Williams. Just a lot of guys that I don't know outside of Jason Verrett that I have really faith with. They have Jaquiski Tart and Jimmy Ward, who are good guys. But do you think that secondary could maybe struggle a little bit if the pass rush? I mean, it takes a couple of weeks for Nick Bosa to really get his feet under him and kind of get rolling.
I could see them struggling a little bit. I like this. I like their safeties more than their corners. But the beauty is like the linebackers in the front four is so good that they make up for a lot of it. So like even if they do struggle, I think it's one of those teams with one of those things where the roster's strong enough to like make up for those maybe the cornerback struggling, and then hopefully like anything they improve throughout the season, and then you can rely on them more down the stretch. But I think they'll be good enough to like hold up for sure. It's definitely probably the weakest point of the defense.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's a huge question mark. I guess another thing could be, do you think they'll miss Robert Saleh back there with his energy and kind of his fire? Do you think he kind of gets the most out of guys? It felt like he got the most out of guys on the defensive side of the ball. Guess that would have been a better question as well. But you think they'll miss him at all?
Oh, 100%. I think they definitely will. They'll still be a very good unit. I think they'll still be a top five, potentially three unit in the league. They're just stacked, but like, yeah, Robert Saleh was a phenomenal defensive coordinator. He had those guys ready to play, locked in, knowing their positions, knowing what they're supposed to be doing, where they need to be on the field, what's going on. And like, so yeah, I'm sure he'll be missed. That's like, it's hard to make up that presence. I don't know if he'll be missed to the point where you're going to be able to notice every Sunday because that unit's just so talented.
Yeah, they added D'Amico Ryans as their he took over for Robert Saleh with his departure. Obviously, former linebacker
Mm-hmm.
in the NFL. So I mean, he's a former player. I kind of like player, but it's kind of a big thing, right? When you have Kyle Shanahan, who's an offensive guy, who's not really going to be as involved as much on the defense, that you're kind of your defensive coordinator kind of shows up on his game, and we saw Robert Saleh do that week in and week out. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure. Nico Ryan's with a team that kind of has almost Super Bowl, yeah, I'd say Super Bowl expectations with everybody coming back to kind of get that defense churning. Any really closing thoughts on the San Francisco 49ers before we really kind of wrap this thing up and make our predictions on the 49ers?
If you were If you had an elite offensive unit and you needed an offensive coach, this is a really random question, but because we're in the NFC West and we just finished talking about the Rams and talking so highly about Sean McVay, and then we go to the Niners and we talk very highly about Kyle Shanahan. They're both great offensive coaches. You can't go wrong. But like, if you had to choose one preference wise, like to fit your offense, like do you like Sean McVay or like Kyle Shanahan?
I'd probably go Kyle Shanahan. I just think he did it in Atlanta. We kind of saw his offense in Atlanta work out, and then we see him kind of take it out to the Bay Area, do it with Jimmy G. I just kind of like how he can kind of throw in, it seems, any running back into that scheme, and they kind of do their thing. He's so I don't know. They're both great offensive minds. I mean, but I'd probably roll with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I would lean Kyle Shanahan. He did wonders for that Falcons team, and I just love all his pre-snap motion and what he can do with his own runs. It's very impressive.
Exactly. He's super creative. I love that amount of creativity. I hope my team's offense can kind of maybe replicate even the slightest fraction of that. But yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Our final record prediction going into 2021. DraftKings Sportsbook has the 49ers win-loss total set at 10.5. The under 10.5 is it's at minus 115 right now. The over 10.5 is at minus 105. So the under's slight favorite, but it's very, very tight. It's almost like leaning as almost a pick 'em. It's kind of like it's very enticing. When I went through though, I had the 49ers. I don't know, I could be crazy, call me crazy. I had the 49ers going 13-4. I just like the fourth place schedule. They're playing a last place schedule with probably one of the most talented groups and head coaches in the entire league. So it's like I just think it's like lightning in a bottle. Everything worked out perfect. They had a down year last year. It is what it is. They snagged Trey Lance. Hopefully get him into the program by mid-year. And I just think Kyle Shanahan's smart enough, and those guys on defense, if everything's churning and they all stay healthy, that this team will win plenty of football games. So I had them at 13-4. I call me crazy, but I like the 49ers a lot.
Yeah, same. I'm very high on the 49ers. I had got them 13-4 as well. I think they're right behind. You gotta give respect to the Super Bowl champions. So right behind the Buccaneers, I think they're the best team in the NFC. Uh, their roster coming back healthy. They were playing the last place schedule is like a blessing for them in disguise. They're I got them going 13-4, and three of those losses are division games. So that means I only have them losing one game outside of their division, which is probably wrong. Don't get me like it'll probably be different than that. But the team is just so talented. And I think once Trey Lance gets the reins and he really starts going, they're going to be so good because Trey Lance is just an athlete. He just has all the intangibles, like we said earlier, and he can elevate the offense even more. So like the Niners are that team. They have an incredibly good chance to represent the NFC.
Exactly. I don't have it on hand because, computer issues. But yeah, I think out of their four losses, I want to say, I think two or three of them were in the division. I think maybe two. I forget, to be honest, the exact total. But yeah, I mean, they're just set up for success. Last place schedule, all the talent in the world. And yeah, I would agree. I mean, they're at least, yeah, I mean, it could be like a 2A, 2B type of thing if you're going to, for sure, put the Buccaneers up there as the Uno in the NFC. I would say the 49ers are damn near close and could certainly cause them trouble with how smart Sean McVay is on the offensive side of the ball. But any really closing thoughts before we kind of wrap up our last? This is the last preview of the 2021 off season, so it's kind of 2 weeks from now. This is the real deal.
Yeah, very happy to be done with the previews because that means we're closer to the actual season. And in 2 weeks, we'll be having the shows going, predicting spreads, getting it going. And I just cannot wait.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was super fun for the first time really to dive into the entire NFL and look at all 32 teams, look at what they did in the offseason, what they didn't do. It was kind of it was certainly a fun experience for me. But yeah, as you said, wrapping this thing up, we know we're a bye week And then we're right into the real thing. I can't wait for September 9th when we got the Buccaneers and Cowboys battling it out on opening night. Hopefully the Cowboys get dominated. But
Yes.
facts. But I mean, that's gonna wrap it up. That's gonna wrap it up for this episode. I want to thank anybody or everybody for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you have any suggestions, or if we didn't say the correct number of games, drop that in the in the comments. We'll make sure to get the correct number of games for the next show. And as always, our Spotify link will be in the description. For audio only listeners, you can follow us on Twitter at Take3Sports if you want to converse. I don't know, curse us out, say we suck, or even say we're doing a good job. We'd appreciate that as well. But thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one.